Good evening, YouTube, and welcome to one of Tyler's tech tutorials. And I am going to show you how to build a virtual machine running in Hyper-V. So let's go back to our host machine. And what I have here is a desktop tower that I found in storage in my basement. It was actually in my storage shed, and then I brought it to my basement a couple years ago, and then a couple weeks ago I brought it upstairs. I ripped it apart. I replaced the hardware inside with upgraded RAM, a new solid state drive, and replaced some of the cables, and built a host machine running Windows Server 2016 Standard Edition. And this could, hypothetically speaking, be used to run a small business. Probably wouldn't last very long because it's not recommended to use a consumer product like a HP desktop tower, in a live enterprise environment. It's not the machine, the hardware is not designed, it's not built for that type of usage. We want an actual host machine or a blade server. It's going to be mounted on a server rack in a server room. So this purpose is just to demonstrate how to build a virtual machine running on a host machine with Hyper-V installed. So I've already installed Hyper-V on this host machine. So this is an actual machine that I'm logged into. It's an actual host machine. It's the desktop tower I rebuilt. It's running, it currently has 16 gigs of RAM, a solid state hard drive, and the processor, I'm pretty sure it's an AMD A3 5300 series. A4 5300. Yeah, okay. So it's not a bad processor. I mean, I'm more of an Intel-based processor fan, but in this case, it works great. It works great. So we already set up our Hyper-V switch. In this case, I created a external virtual switch that will communicate with other resources on the network, with other devices, nodes, clients, and it will give us access to the internet so we can install additional rules and features on this machine and the virtual machine itself as we finish building it. And it's actually quite simple. You just go into virtual switches, create virtual switch, and we're going to check external switch. Here's the network interface card, the physical hardware currently installed. This gives us access to our internet. It's physically connected to my network, and then it will go out to the ISP to access the World Wide Web and the internet as we all know it. So if you have a server with multiple NICs attached, we would just select which NIC we're going to be using, and we're going to click apply, and it's going to say it needs to reset. So you're going to lose the connection for a few minutes, and then it's going to virtualize that physical network interface card, and it's going to attach that to the virtual machine, and we can use that as we build other virtual machines. We can attach that external virtual switch to each machine that we built. Now we can also go and build a private virtual switch that's going to be our own virtual switch per se. Well, we're not going to get into detail about that. Hyper-V settings. One thing we want to make sure of is that we're installing, or that we're storing our virtual hard disks on a separate partition, a formatted partition with a new volume set with NTFS files permissions. And you can see here, we don't want it on the C drive. We don't want it on this partition because that is going to, you could, but it's not recommended. because this is the operating system. And we want to keep that isolated from any other services running on this server. And virtual hard disks can get very big in size. So we want to make sure those are getting stored on a separate volume. So let's build the virtual machine, finally. So I need to go over here and click new, or I can right click new virtual machine. What we're going to do is we're going to call this DC1 because it's going to stand for domain controller 1. Yes, we want to store this virtual machine in a different folder. This one. Generation 2. We're going to leave the default settings. We may have to increase the memory at some point. In fact, let's do it anyway. Let's do 224 megabits, 2024 megabytes. Next. And we're going to connect it to our external virtual switch. Next. Yes, we want to create a new virtual hard disk. Remember how I said we want to make sure it's getting saved on a separate drive. Let's see if I already have that image mounted on this. I probably don't. Oh, bummer. All right, so here's one cool thing is that I actually have a NAS server set up. NAS is a network attached storage. So let's say I want to make sure that I have files that are accessible over the network. I mean, it's secure. It's only accessible to who I want it to be to. But in this case, I have a Raspberry Pi. It's just a very cost-effective device, $35, and I built an SMB server, and that is going to have my image that I need to mount. So here's Windows Server 2016 Data Center. It's going to take a few minutes. Okay, before I start the virtual machine, let's look at the settings. Very good. Let's increase the processor. So we've got 2 virtual processors. We'll leave secure boot enabled for now. Hopefully it won't cause problems. Sometimes it does when you're first building it. Let's add another virtual hard disk. And we're probably just going to use fixed size. So we don't need that folder anymore because we already have one built in here. Yep, very good. So we're going to say fixed size. Next, we're going to call it DC1. It always takes a few minutes when you're creating the virtual hard disk. So let's see if a web server is finished installing. We use PowerShell to install a web server. And there it is. When it comes to Windows Server, you can automate several tasks with PowerShell using a scripting utility command line. It's like command prompt, only it's more built like Bash and shell for like a Linux. Like let's say I want to write a shell script and I want to install services, or I want to automate a task that would be repetitive and take me forever. So I don't want to do that task all the time, so I want to write a script. I want to automate it, so I don't have to do it all the time. And that's the advantage of scripting. So let's say I need to find what an IP address is or DNS records. So I have a script here, and this is the NAS server that I was telling you about, the network attached storage. I have a Raspberry Pi built to provide NTFS permissions on my network, so I can access this from any computer on my network. It's pretty handy, like that's how I got that Windows Server image, was from this. So I'm getting off subject here, which is easy to do on these. So here's the script, okay? Now when I run this script, I'm going to specify what URL I want to retrieve DNS records for. I want the IP address. I want everything that's registered with ICANN. So let's actually see it in action. Okay. Any good programmer is going to implement error checking. So if I run the script without any parameters, it's going to tell me that it's not going to work. Very good. So let's go to Google and then CNN. And it's going to give me the public IP address for each site and DNS records. That's what we want. Now I could provide much more information. This was basic for demonstration. So back to the Hyper-V. All right, so it's still building that virtual hard disk, and like I said, it could take a while. So in the meantime, I want to show you what I currently have set up. I have a Windows server already installed that we're going to be using.